What's going on, everyone? I hope you're sticking with me here because that last topic was really important. And now the next one is, how do we start to actually use some of those things that we just talked about? And so in this one, we're going to start to learn how you as an entrepreneur can better calculate the revenue that your business is expecting or can project. And if we can do this the right way, all of our planning comes really, really easy. But also, we're going to learn a lot more about the areas that we can improve to better improve our sales or our transaction or our conversion rate or anything else. And so first off, I want to introduce financial models. So this is my super skill. I learned how to do this when I was back at the Big Four accounting firm, and I've taken this with me ever since. And frankly, it's one of the more interesting and important things that any company can do, but at the same time, it's kind of bullshit. And so what a good financial model does is it takes your actual results, it adds in your budget, it understands your KPIs of how we're going to operate. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it allows us to start to project out what we can expect financial statements to be. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of informed bullshit, but at the same time, understanding this is critical for long-term success. And what we're going to do now is introduce a really, really simple way that we could start to understand how to do this. So the first thing that we're going to need to look at is, what is a KPI? They're called key performance indicators. Basically, they're metrics. And as many of you have heard, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so what that means is that as a business, we're going to start to look at certain variables that are going to be important, that we're going to want to track, optimize, and measure over time, that indicate how successful we are at doing whatever it is. So for example, in the farm, it could be how many growing space you have. It could be your loss percentage and spoilage. It could be our overall energy costs. We could also look at it from a sales perspective. We could look at how many new customers we have or how we're acquiring customers. It could be really anything. And what we're going to want to do as the entrepreneur is set up maybe 5 to 10 things that we're going to want to track and figure out how to track them. And so once we can understand this, or a better question is, how do we even know what they are, right? So before we can track them, how do we identify them? Some of them obviously are really, really top of mind. However, there's a really easy process that we're going to get into that we can start to look at it. But first, I want to introduce this really great visual that I found. It's by an entrepreneur named Dave McClure out in LA. And he calls it Startup Metrics for Pirates. And what he's able to look at is the acquisition, where customers come from, the activation, whereas once you can acquire them from wherever they come from, how good are you at converting that interest into a customer? Once you're there, how do you make money, right? What does that transaction look like? What's the revenue model that we're looking at? Then the other two are referrals. Do people come back? Do people stay? And that's retention. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, it's called Startup Metrics for Pirates because the acronym is R. It's a fun joke, whatever. And so as we're looking at this, now we're going to get into our example. And so what I would like everybody to think about, and you could do this along with me, is to calculate our sales revenue and to learn what our KPIs are. We're going to take a blank piece of paper. It could be anything. It could be a whiteboard. It could be a PowerPoint slide. And we're going to write revenue equals quantity times price at the top of it. And for this example, we're going to use a business that I created called Nellie's Organic. And this business is some farm business. It doesn't really matter what it is. But the business is designed to grow some plant and sell it. We'll see why that doesn't really matter. And so what I want to do as the entrepreneur and the founder of Nellie's Organic is to understand what my KPIs are going to be, that I want to learn, I want to track to measure my success, but also understand so I can learn how to project out my revenue. Once again, everyone can do this. This is going to look different for your business, and it's going to look different based on the customers that you're selling to. In this example, I have a farm stand. Okay. And so the first thing that we're going to say is quantity. How many plants do I sell? What does that equal to, right? What's the algebra there? And really, it's just the number of customers times how much they buy per transaction. It's pretty simple, right? That's what quantity is equal to. But what is customers equal to? And what is quantity equal to? And so as we keep going lower and lower through this chain, we're using algebra to investigate how to calculate each of these things. And so the customers is going to be equal to new customers plus existing customers minus lost ones. And our quantity per transaction is going to be equal to the purchases per visit times the number of visits. And what we're able to do, and this is you can do this very easily, right? We're just making this hierarchy of our map. And we can keep going. And so the next level is when I look at our new customers, that's going to be equal to my marketing budget divided by my performance of that budget, right? My existing customers is going to equal my beginning balance from last month minus my churn and my lost customers. And the total number of customer visits is equal to how many customers are and how often they come back. And as we go through this very simple step function, what we've actually done is we identified what our KPIs are for this business. Because now, if I could track how many new customers I have and how many existing customers I have and how many lost customers I have, I'm going to be able to get a much better understanding of how my business is going to perform that month. But even more importantly, if we start to look at any one of these metrics, now we can start to improve all of the other areas around it, right? So the number of new customers is equal to the marketing budget divided by performance. And so now maybe that performance is something that we're going to want to investigate and improve. And if we can improve the performance of our marketing budget by 10, 20, 30% by making simple changes or really hard changes, what's the effect in the revenue going to be, right? And as we continue to look through this analysis, we've also identified what our marketing budget's going to be, right? Because our budget is going to be set. And so if we know what our performance is and we're budgeting what we think it should be, what we're going to start to understand is how many customers we would expect to get. And once again, this is for my faux business, but for your business, as you're going through, what will happen is you'll start to actually identify these KPIs in each of those startup metrics for Pirates basis, right? Acquisition is net new customers. Our retention is their churn. Our activation is how successful we are at having a customer convert once they come to our store or our farm stand. And how often they come back is more activation. And so now as we're looking at these metrics, what we've actually done through this analysis is started to create a financial model. I have to keep moving myself. But in this simple model, if I take this slide and I look at this bottom row here and I start to do the algebra that we started to talk about, I'm actually able to build it back up into a revenue projection. And this is fundamentally critical for everybody. If you guys do nothing else from this class and take away nothing else, it's this. Because now, once we know how to calculate our revenue, on the back end, we're able to create our pro forma financial statements. And we're going to talk about how we're going to calculate everything else below the line from here. And so what's really cool is that if we build it the right way and we understand just a little bit of Excel And I do have this spreadsheet available on the site. I think there's a link to it in a minute, but it's going to be available in the resources for this component. But this spreadsheet, now we can look at how our marketing budget is going to affect our bottom line. Or how, if we can go from 0 0.5 visits per month to 10 visits per month, what's that's going to do to our revenue? And then once we identify these things and we know how they can change, really this is what's powerful of being an entrepreneur. And this is how you can build smarter, more structurally significant and robust businesses going forward. And what's cool is we just built a financial model. It's just that easy. I generally can do this at scale. I've done lots of these. There's a lot more that we can get into because each of those line items can be continuously discovered and tracked and digested and investigated. But at the top level, if we can get to here, we're going to be a lot more successful as a business. And once again, what's cool about this process is that it's just algebra. There's really no crazy accounting. There's not much else going on in here. It's just looking at our business, understanding it, and lining it up. And so I do have a farm model, a fundamentally huge, exciting Excel model that's going to be able to help project out your CapEx and your OpEx and all this other stuff that we're going to talk about. It's going to be at startupeconomics101.com/models. It's going to be in the resources. I have a little bit more work to do on that. But in the meantime, one of our friends at Agritecture, which is a fantastic urban farming company, I am not paid to do this. I get nothing back. But their Agritecture designer will help you start to flesh out a lot of these terms for your specific business. And so it's a great resource. I've done it. I find it really fascinating, and it will help you understand how much money you could expect to make, where your CapEx and where you're going to have to spend money is, and a little bit more about how to build this robust farm business that you want. Once again, I get nothing back. If you use the code StartupEconomics101, I am working on a discount. And so that's available. If you just search Agritecture Designer, you'll find it. And that's how we're going to calculate revenue for today. That's it. The rest of the class, we're going to start to go down those financial statements and understand a little bit more about the back end of the business. And so I'll see you after the jump with a little bit more of a conversation on expenses, also known as how you spend all this money.